Imagine if there was a crank attached to the people that you need to move that you could access and turn to get them to do what they need to do. What would that mean for them? And what would that mean for you? Now, I'm getting ready to pull something out of this box. And for some of you, this is going to cause you to be full of great joy and happiness. But for most of you, this is going to cause you to have flashbacks to acute childhood trauma. You've been warned. Man, that was weird. Okay, so what just happened there? Literally, what just happened? Well, a sock monkey popped out of a box. I turned a crank, whatever magic in there happens, and then, boom, sock monkey. But here's what I noticed from my vantage point up here. For about 75 seconds, I had just about everybody's complete attention. Why? Well, there was a compelling vision about a crank and how it could benefit you and others, right? There was anticipation in what was getting ready to happen. There was simplicity in the illustration. There was emotional intrigue. Everybody in here has some sort of emotional connection to this goofy little toy, right? And there was the action itself where potential energy turned into kinetic action, kinetic energy, the energy of movement. And I saw it in the toy, and I saw it in you right there, right? You jumped, right? Thanks for being part of the demonstration. So, here's what I've noticed over the last 20 years. I've been fortunate to be in a position where I've given over 900 talks, and every single time there is a goal, and the goal is to inspire action, either to adopt a new behavior or believe in something new. And what I've begun to realize, I guess the epiphany I've had in the last 5 years, is that the basic physics that goes into how this works parallels the psychology behind how to move people. Which begs the question, why do you need to move people? Now, I'm talking about beyond, you need to eat your vegetables, you need to show up to class on time. I am talking about what this right here represents. Now, immediately, many of you all know what this is, right? This is the sigmoid curve or the S-curve. This is not anything new. It's been around since the 1800s. Pierre-Francois Verhulst, who was a doctor of number theory, and a mathematician, that's a party waiting to happen, he came up with a mathematical formula that results in this shape right here. And this shape relates to anything where the human dynamic is involved. This is your lifeline. This is your career line. If you're in business, this is your business model line. In relationships, it's your relationship line. So let's dissect this and make it a bit more tangible. There are 3 parts to the sigmoid curve. Now, business analysts will say there are 4 parts, but if we're doing it right, there's only 3 parts, okay? So the very first part is the formative stage, the formation of something new. And so I want you to think about this related to a brand new relationship. Think back to when you started a brand new, fantastic relationship. You're 3 to 4 weeks into a brand new relationship. That person that you met online, you met him for coffee, the face matched the profile pic, nobody's getting catfished, they laugh at you, they genuinely like your jokes, you think they're cute, and you know they're cute. And you start having those feelings in your stomach. What are you feeling during this time? Well, you're feeling hopeful, you're feeling excited, right? You're energetic. You haven't played tennis a day in your life, this person plays tennis. Suddenly, you're playing tennis every Saturday morning, right? There is a level of anxiety, because you don't know what the future looks like and you don't want to mess this up. By the way, it's also very expensive, right? I started dating my wife 1 month before we graduated from Harding University, Searcy, Arkansas. And I can tell you for that 1 month when I was taking her on dates and wanted to impress her, I was not taking her to my favorite restaurant in Searcy, Arkansas, Taco Bell. No, I wanted to impress her, so I took her to the finest steakhouse in Central Arkansas, which was Bonanza. And during the, I was spending credit card money I did not have because I didn't want to mess this up. Now, by the way, You see how the bottom of that line is nice and smooth? In reality, it's not smooth at all, right? I mean, it's like, we're going to Bonanza. She's a vegan. Crash burn, right? But you see where we're headed. You see, and where we're headed is the next stage. It's called the formative stage. Now, the formative stage the normative stage is when things begin to normalize. In business, this is profits, it's growth, it's rock and roll. We're hiring like crazy. We want that line to keep going that way, right? It's also when rules, methodologies, traditional norms are locked down to act as guardrails. Now go back to the relationship. You know that person over here that you're feeling all, butterfly feeling about? What is it like now after being married to them for 30 years? Now, there are two ways we could go with this, right? But let's start with the positive. It is stable. It's comfortable. It is predictable. And because of that, after a while, quite frankly, it may start getting boring, right? Same thing in business. And you see where we're headed. And I'm getting ready to show you something that is a 100% guarantee that this will happen. It is an indicator that you're at the end of the second stage, almost to the third stage. And what you'll see right here is this dynamic. Remember all that craziness right there in the formative stage, those ups and downs? Suddenly you start feeling it again, and people completely wig out. Because everything I'm comfortable with is now being challenged. What worked in the past is not working now. But it's always an indicator that you're heading into the third stage. And the third stage, now this is where business analysts will say, okay, that's the plateau and that is the decline. If you're doing it right, it's actually called one thing. It's called the integrative stage. And it's called the integrative stage because the best businesses, educational institutions, nonprofits, ministries, and relationships will do this. So what does that dotted line represent? It's a new formative stage. And if you've done business classes in graduate school, you've talked about building those stacked S-curves, right? Because here's the deal. In marriage, if I said that first line right there, that solid line was my marriage, that would be depressing. Because look at those last couple of decades. They're not going to be fun. But instead, in business and in every component of life, this is what you end up doing, right? I mean, this is us without kids. This is us with kids. We're now empty nesters. We're now hanging out on a boat in Boca Raton. We're now changing each other's diapers in the nursing home, whatever that last one is, right? But you see, there's an evolution over time of growth. And I want you to understand that a lot of people do not want to do this. There will always be resistance. And things evolve whether you want them to or not. So the question is, how do you get people to take action when they need to evolve? Because equilibrium is always a precursor to irrelevance. So we go back to this, the Jack in the Box. Have you ever been curious what's on the inside of one of these things? I saw a YouTube video of a father and a son sawing one open, and I thought, well, that kind of looks easy. It can't be that hard. So 6 minutes with a Dremel saw, and exactly one Band-Aid later, this is what we end up with. Here are the ingredients. And not a whole lot there, right? So let's start breaking it down. We're going to start with the spring. Okay, so obviously the sock monkey is attached to the spring. And the sock monkey looks like it's just given up, right? I mean, you gutted me, I'm done. But don't worry about the sock. Think about the spring. Because in the box, it's what we call loaded with potential energy. In physics, they call them joules, Joules, not the kind you're wearing on your hand. But it's got potential energy, not kinetic energy of movement, but potential just like people. And then we look inside this box, and here's what's there. And there's not a lot to it. And you may say, people are much more complex than that. Not really. They're really not. So let's break this down. We'll start with the crank. The crank indicates the energy you, as the leader or influencer, have to put forth in order to initiate the process. And then we get on the inside of this thing. Now, here's what the inside of a jack-in-the-box looks like, right? And let's start off with this left-hand side here, this metal drum with these strategically placed protruding pins. And that is actually the music drum. That right there is the placement of pins to make Pop Goes the Weasel, okay? And I want you to think about this as this is your message. What is the message that you want to resonate with the people you need to move? But it alone does nothing. You've got to have that right-hand side. And we call this little comb over there, and you see that these prongs that actually touch the music drum, they vary in length from short at the top to long at the bottom, right? And that is your delivery. Because if they were all the same size, it wouldn't resonate pleasingly. Instead, it would be a mind-numbingly monotone sound. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We have a slightly different angle on this. And specifically, I want you to look at that plastic protrusion right there. Because the entire toy would be pointless without that. Because as you turn the crank, the message rolls, the delivery's made, and that plastic protrusion goes around, hits the red latch, and then pop, action. Without that, you could turn the crank 1,000 times, the drum will turn 1,000 times, pop goes the weasel, will play 1,000 times, and there'll be zero action on the end. Without this, we call it the bump. And the bump is quite frankly, is the self-centered reason why people need to evolve. That's it. We call it the so what to your message. And that is where everything starts. That is the most important component of this process. The genesis of all decision-making. Now, this is where it starts in your brain. The genesis of all decision-making, whether or not to set up an account on eHarmony or farmersonly.com, whether or not to swipe right or swipe left, whether or not to go to Taco Bell or Bonanza, whether or not to stay in Arkansas or move to California, whether or not to stay hung to the status quo with a kung fu grip or evolve with a new formative phase. The genesis of all decision-making is in the old brain. And folks, the old brain is all about survival. It's about self-preservation. Now, yes, we can make logical decisions, but you know what? Many times the logical brain will only try to, listen to this, justify the decision the old brain has already started to make. That is the reason we vote the way we vote, we date who we date, we live the way we do. Old brain decision-making is all about self-preservation. And if you don't have that self-preservation bump in your message, people will not take action. So folks, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, it is very basic, all right? So this is where we're going to start. The B is for the bump. What is the benefit to the people that you're trying to inspire to take action? You've got to define that simply and bake it in. Think about the Sermon on the Mount. You adopt this behavior or reflect this spirit, here's your blessing. The A is for anticipation. Winston Churchill was a master at anticipation. In May of 1940, it looked like World War II was over even before it began. And he stood before the House of Commons. The nation was reeling. They needed direction. And here's what Winston Churchill said. He said, you ask yourself, what is our policy? What is our aim? And I can tell you in one word. Victory. For without victory, there is no survival. Beautiful anticipation. You can't get more old brain focused than survival, right? And by the way, incredibly simple, which leads to this right here. The S is for simplicity. Steve Jobs in 2005 was talking to the Stanford graduating class, and he was trying to inspire them to take the action of pursuing their true love and passion in life. Now, he had been battling pancreatic cancer for 4 years by this point. And he stood before them at that commencement speech, and he said, today I'm going to share just 3 stories from my life. That's it, just 3 stories, no big deal. And the first is about connecting the dots. The second story is about love and loss. And then he went on. My third story is about death. Man, beautiful, powerful. The I is for intrigue, specifically emotional intrigue. Everybody in here has some sort of emotional connection to this goofy little Jack-in-the-Box toy right here, right? And I want you to think about this. The great movers of people, songwriters, movie directors, poets, artists, preachers, understand the value of tapping into emotion in an intriguing way. In fact, there was this one preacher, which is my example for compelling vision. Back in 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. stood there in that mall in front of 250,000 people. And he delivered a compelling vision that actually connected to a bump. Now, by the way, it was so simple that even to this day, everybody in this audience knows these 4 words, right? You fill in the last blank. I have a, We all know it. And again, if you can connect that to the bump, action. Now let me show you one other thing that's very simple and helps to move people and very basic. It's the illustration itself. Here's the reality in my world, and I completely understand this. 1 month from now, or 3 months from now, or a year from now, or maybe even as soon as the next break, when you guys walk out there and you eat your cookies and you drink your coffee, very few people will probably remember my name, but everybody will remember Sock Monkey Guy, because the right illustration connects to the decision-making brain better than words even can. And so find your compelling illustration. Define the benefit bump. Build anticipation in a way that begs for release. Make it simple. Bake in emotional intrigue and paint a compelling vision. Because people need to move. Equilibrium is always a precursor to irrelevance. Imagine if there was a crank that you could turn to get them to do what they need to do. What would that mean for them? And what would that mean for you? Thank you.